I've always really appreciated the way the Super Smash Bros. Games use these emblems to represent what game series different characters and stages are from. It just feels so natural, even though when you think about it, it's really unusual for a game series to have an established symbol that represents it like this. Not everything can be The Legend of Zelda, you know? So, I'm Misali, and I just want to look at all of these series symbols and talk about what I think about them, and put them in a tier list as we go, because why not? First, however, some parameters. What is the purpose of these symbols? What would it mean for one to be particularly good? Series symbols are used as part of the user interface in all 5 or 6 Smash games. The main places they show up are on the character selection screen, the stage selection screen, the victory screen after fights, and the damage percentage display for characters during gameplay. The purpose of these symbols is to indicate where different characters and stages come from, and to help group together things that are from the same source material. This definitely wasn't strictly necessary to do. I mean, every game since Brawl has been putting the logos for what games stages come from right next to their names on the stage selection screen, rendering the symbols for what games they're from completely redundant. It's just telling you what game it's from twice. But also, the symbols look cool, and I'm glad they're included. Aesthetically, these symbols have some pretty specific restrictions. They don't use any color or shading, all appearing as completely flat shapes. In fact, the ones used for playable characters need to work in any color, since different colors are used in the user interface to indicate which player is using which character. The symbols also all fit within a roughly square aspect ratio. They can be partially obscured, rotated, and shown at different scales. On the character and stage selection screens, where these symbols are actually communicating important information, they're shown at a pretty small scale, since most of the screen real estate is taken up by the massive selection of characters and stages you can choose from. So I'll be rating these with 2 main criteria in mind. The first is design. How suited is it as a UI element? Is it readable in context? Is it distinct from other symbols? And very importantly, does it look good? The other one is symbolism. Does it do a good job representing the series it's meant to represent? What aspects of the source material does it emphasize? Is it a symbol that's already associated with the series through branding, or is this association specific to Smash? That's the idea, at least. I'm gonna skip the standard disclaimer about how all opinions are subjective and get right into it. We've got a lot of series symbols to cover. The Super Mario series, Nintendo's flagship franchise, is represented in Smash by this mushroom with eyes. In Smash Bros. Brawl, it was redesigned to include these spots. Mushrooms are extremely important to the iconography of the Super Mario series. Most Mario games take place in the Mushroom Kingdom, and mushrooms with eyes are a common sight. Without color, it's hard to say for certain, but this is probably meant to be a super mushroom, which, in my opinion, is the perfect symbol to represent this series. The super mushroom is what causes Mario to become Super Mario, so it's fitting that this is the symbol used to differentiate between the Super Mario series and the other series within the Mario franchise that get their own symbols. However, in practice, this symbol's use is somewhat inconsistent. Part of that is just how ambiguous the boundaries between the Super Mario series and the rest of the Mario games actually is, a topic nuanced enough for an entire video on its own, but this super mushroom seems to be used both for the Super Mario series in particular and for the broader Mario franchise as a whole. Which, you know, it's fine. Mushrooms are important to the Mario games as a whole, it's not just a Super Mario thing. Anyway, I'm gonna say this one's A tier for the original version, but S tier for the redesign. The Donkey Kong series uses the letters DK. The exact meaning of these letters is unknown, but it could be a play on the word decay, or more likely, the initials of Donkey Kong. The letters DK have appeared on a tie worn by a character named Donkey Kong ever since the 1994 Game Boy reimagining of the original arcade game. It definitely works, it is functional as a series symbol, but just using initials like this to me feels like it's saying the Donkey Kong series has no proper iconography to speak of, which is not true. They could have gone with a bunch of bananas or, you know, a barrel, but really just about anything would have been better symbolism than this. F tier. The Legend of Zelda series uses 3 equilateral triangles arranged in a triangular pattern. I have a sneaking suspicion that the existence of this symbol is the reason all series in Smash are given symbols in the first place. This mathematical beauty is the Triforce, a golden relic of unlimited power. It's been a part of the Zelda series since the beginning, but this depiction of the 3 pieces of the Triforce arranged in this shape was first used in A Link to the Past, and has been a core part of the Zelda game's visual identity ever since, and by extension, a symbol of video gaming itself. The 3 pieces of the Triforce are the Triforces of Power, Wisdom, and Courage, virtues, or forces, which correspond to the 3 main characters of the Legend of Zelda series. That's some really good symbolism. This works perfectly on every level. No notes. S tier. Like most series that debuted in the original Super Smash Bros., Metroid has been represented with 2 slightly different takes on the same symbol. However, the difference between them is more substantial than the other pairs, so I'll talk about them separately. In Smash 64 and Melee, Metroid used a circle with a lightning bolt over it, somewhat resembling the letter S. This design is the Screw Attack, an item appearing in several Metroid games which allows Samus to attack enemies by jumping diagonally. Now, this is a weird pick, as something to represent the Metroid series. Like, the Metroid games are, in a sense, all about exploring a desolate environment and uncovering new paths by collecting items that give you new abilities. So I do get the logic of using an item to represent the series, but surely something like the Morph Ball would work better, right? It has a way more prominent role throughout the series, and its function, allowing Samus to curl up into a ball to roll into tight spaces, is much more directly connected to Metroid's core concept. Or they could have used a Metroid. You know, the creatures with a really distinctive design that the series is named after. I don't know, I just don't think this symbol is that good. F tier. However, the redesigned symbol for the Metroid series is a big improvement. Since Brawl, the Metroid games have been represented in Smash using this stylized letter S on top of a circle. It's visually similar to the screw attack design from before, but in my opinion at least, it's a massive upgrade. The negative space separating the S from the circle in the background there makes a huge difference. Of course, despite the visual similarity, this is not the screw attack anymore. This symbol was first used in the ending of Super Metroid, and between the releases of Melee and Brawl, the Metroid games started using this cool S as part of their branding. It's a unique case where a series started using a symbol for itself between the release of 2 Smash games. It's not a particularly meaningful symbol, but it does look cool, and it's definitely more significant to the series than the screw attack is, so that's enough to bump this symbol all the way up to B tier. The symbol for Yoshi is an egg with 3 spots. This one was also redesigned slightly for Brawl. Yoshi has been associated with eggs ever since the character was first introduced in Super Mario World. Using one for Smash is simply the most obvious choice. The symbolism here isn't that deep, but like, it's Yoshi, so it doesn't really need to be that deep. Nothing more to say about this one really, except that I guess the Brawl redesign does look a little nicer. Solid A tier. The Kirby series uses this 5-pointed star with slightly rounded edges. While it's commonly interpreted to specifically be a warp star, stars that look like this have been a prominent feature of Kirby iconography throughout the history of the series. Notably, stars have been used as part of the logos of Kirby games since as early as the Game Boy original, which in Japan is called Kirby of the Stars. So this is one of the ones I feel the most conflicted about. On one hand, this is pretty good symbolism. This could be interpreted as representing a lot of the core themes of the Kirby series. There's the general cute aesthetic, the vibes of fantasy and soft magic, and maybe even a light touch of cosmic horror. Like, yeah, that's Kirby. Also, the design itself is pretty appealing. This is a nice looking star. On the other hand, this is just so generic looking, isn't it? Sure, it makes a lot of sense to represent the Kirby series with a star like this, but Kirby is not the only Nintendo series that uses stars as part of its iconography. This specific star design might be distinctly Kirby, but I'm not certain it's enough. That said, I think this was the right choice, despite how generic it feels. The only remotely sensible alternative would be using the silhouette of Kirby himself, and that would probably be too literal. So, I guess B tier. The Star Fox series uses a fox with wings, which was given a pretty significant visual upgrade in Brawl. The symbolism here is a bit on the nose, but that's fine. This is the emblem of the Star Fox team, and has been used since Star Fox 64, where it's featured prominently on all the various vehicles you can use. I think C tier for the original version, but B tier for the redesign. The Pokemon series is represented using a circle divided in half, with a smaller circle in the center. Once again, this was given a redesign for Brawl. If it weren't for the Triforce, this would be my top contender for the symbol that inspired the Smash Bros. Team to represent the various series using symbols. This is, of course, a Pokeball. In the games, these capsules are used to capture wild Pokemon, and to carry your own Pokemon with you. As a result, they are associated with just about every single defining aspect of what makes the Pokemon series what it is. Capturing Pokemon, battling Pokemon, the relationship between a Pokemon and their trainer, even the fact that mainline Pokemon games are released for handheld video game consoles. This symbol's got everything. Really strong design, really strong symbolism, and perhaps most importantly, it's a symbol that's already associated extremely heavily with the thing that it's meant to represent. A well-earned S tier for both iterations. The symbol for the Mother or Earthbound series is an image of the Earth, specifically derived from the famous blue marble photograph, using its original orientation with south at the top. This is the one that I have the most conflicted opinions about. Let's start with the negative this time. This design is just unfit for the purpose. There is way too much fine detail here, and at the scale these symbols are typically displayed in-game, you just straight up can't see any of it. In context, the Mother series symbol just looks like some kind of orb. And despite all that detail, it still doesn't really look that much like Earth, right? It's not just because of the orientation either. Turning it upside down so North is at the top does not help that much. It is certainly not helped by the fact that the version that appears in Smash is considerably less detailed than both the original photograph and the version used in logos for the Mother series. Oh, I guess I should note that there's technically been multiple iterations of this design, like most of the series symbols that were used in the original Smash, but I'm not counting this as a redesign. This is clearly the same image that was just vectorized at different levels of fidelity between different games. Anyway, the positive. This is some of the best dang symbolism in the whole set. The Mother trilogy, especially the 2 games that existed at the time Smash 64 was released, distinguishes itself from other JRPGs of the era primarily with its setting, taking the fantasy genre conventions of Dragon Quest and recontextualizing them into a world that's more bound to Earth. The world of this series is our own world, but you could say, from a different perspective. And yeah, it makes a lot of sense to represent that idea using a photograph of the Earth taken from space that has south at the top. That's why it's part of the logo for the Mother series in Japan, and why when Nintendo of America decided for some reason that they can't call this game Mother, they just put the word Earth. right in the title. So great idea for a symbol, but not really the right pick for what a series symbol in Smash Bros is actually supposed to do. Should have just used a Mr. Saturn or something. B tier. And the last of the original 10 series, F-Zero uses a falcon with outstretched wings. This is taken from the crest on Captain Falcon's helmet, though the design used in Smash for the series symbol is streamlined and made easier to parse. From what I can tell, this symbol doesn't really have any greater significance to the F-Zero series, it just represents Captain Falcon. However, that's probably fine considering that the F-Zero series presence in Smash Bros in the first place is really just Captain Falcon. I'm not that familiar with the F-Zero series, so I don't know if there's something else that would have worked better than this. There's not a lot going on for this one, but at least it's a cool bird. That's enough to earn it a B tier. For bird. Before we move on from the symbols that were introduced in the first game, we gotta talk about the symbol used for Super Smash Bros. Itself, which is a circle divided asymmetrically into 4 regions by an off-center cross pattern. This symbol has a very important role to fill. It needs to represent the Super Smash Bros. Series in the same way that all of these symbols represent video game series, but it also needs to be a generic symbol, used for things which aren't from any of the main crossover universes, and I think it does those things extremely well. The design here is top-notch. This one has the almost unique distinction of having been designed for Smash without being based on any existing iconography, and what the designers came up with here is way more abstract than most other series symbols. But it's not just an abstract cool design, there is meaningful symbolism here. And if you weren't aware of what that symbolism is, that's great, because it means I get to be the one who tells you about what the symbolism of the Smash Bros logo is. You start with a circle, like a ring where a fight could happen. This circle is divided into 4 sections, as to suggest a fight between 4 combatants at the same time. But it's done in an asymmetric way, for a fighting game which breaks from convention. Specifically, the vertical line is made more prominent than the horizontal line, emphasizing the verticality of the combat. And the negative space formed by the dividing lines form a cross over the circle, because this is a crossover fighting game. To be fair, I'm pretty sure most of that wasn't intentional, but some of it definitely was. The crossover thing was directly confirmed by Sakurai at some point. But even if this was just reading too much into a meaningless abstract shape, it's cool that this thing's design lends itself to this sort of analysis at all. As we'll see later, you don't get that sort of thing for free. S tier. Okay, slightly awkward edge case, Metal Mario. In the original Smash Bros, when you fought Metal Mario in the single player campaign, he was given this variant of the Mario series symbol, making the mushroom look like it's made of metal. I don't really think this one should count, but Smash Wiki lists it separately, so I might as well play it safe and include it. If it does count as its own thing, then this series symbol is not very good. I'm not going to dwell on it too long, but it does really bother me that the design here breaks the rules by having more than one shade of transparency. It makes it look so out of place next to all the other symbols. And it's all in the service of making this weird metal mushroom, which isn't even from anything. It's literally just the Mario series symbol, but shrink wrapped. This one belongs in F tier. Ice Climber, the home series to the Ice Climbers, has for its symbol this eggplant with eyes. This series doesn't have that much to pull from since the source material consists of a Versus System arcade game released in literally 1984, so they went with an eggplant, I guess. This is one of the vegetables that appears in the bonus levels. I don't think this was the best choice, like even ignoring some unfortunate connotations eggplants would go on to be associated with later. Ice Climber isn't even the 1980s Nintendo game that I associate most strongly with eggplants. I definitely would think of Kid Icarus before Ice Climber for this particular symbol. But you know, what else could they even have used? It's probably fine. C tier though. The Fire Emblem series is represented with a sword with a gemstone on it. This sword is the Falchion, the legendary sword used by some of the main characters throughout the Fire Emblem series, including some that appear in Smash. It's the Blade of Light that the title Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light is referring to, and it also appears in that game's title sequence. The Falchion is pretty important to the Fire Emblem series, but visually it is literally just a sword. I could see a sword like this appearing in literally any video game that has swords in it. I guess of the series in Smash to represent with literally just a sword, Fire Emblem is the most sensible one, but it's still so generic that I'm putting it in D tier. The Game & Watch line of handhelds uses a character with a hard hat ringing a bell. This is the final of these symbols that got a slight redesign for Brawl. I think this is really strong symbolism, easily the best symbolism of any of the series symbols introduced in Melee. This one symbol incorporates literally everything that made the Game & Watches what they were. Let's break it down. First, this character is probably specifically meant to be a reference to the game Helmet, but working class people in hazardous situations was a really common theme in Game & Watch titles, and depicting someone wearing protective headgear communicates that idea very efficiently. The bell is a reference to the alarm functionality of Game & Watches. As the name Game & Watch suggests, these handhelds were games and watches. A character ringing a bell like this was the most common visual indicator Game & Watches used when their built-in alarms went off. Aesthetically, this is very authentic to what Game & Watch character designs looked like, just like Mr. Game & Watch himself. The figure is divided into these disconnected segments, resembling the segments of the LCD screens that Game & Watches used. Remember, the technology these games used restricted what animations were possible really heavily. All you had were these individual segments that could be turned on and off independently, which couldn't overlap or touch each other. By putting a little gap between the arm and the body, this symbol gives the impression that this character could be animated by turning the arm on and off. And in the Melee version, the multiple copies of the bell suggest that the bell could be animated too. So yeah, really impressive amount of symbolism for this. That said, the design here is a bit noisy, and not just because of the alarm bell. It's far from being over complex, but there is more detail in this series symbol than there is for Mr. Game & Watch, but I still like it. In fact, I think the simplified redesign is worse, since only having one copy of the bell loses some of that sweet symbolism that I like about this. A tier for the Melee version, B tier for the redesign. And another edge case. In Melee, the Battlefield stage was given its own unique symbol that's never been used in Smash for anything else, including other appearances of Battlefield. It's a circle divided into 8 sections, spread apart in a rotationally symmetric way. I like this one, I think. It's a take on the same idea as the main Smash Bros symbol, but with a little bit less of the flavor. The ring is divided into more sections, which is fitting for the stage where multi-man melee happens. The segments being spread out gives the impression that the symbol has been shattered, which makes sense for a Battlefield. It is weird that this symbol exists at all, but I do like the abstraction. A tier. The Kid Icarus series is represented with a bow and arrow. This is a weird one. So when Pit was included in Brawl, the Kid Icarus series hadn't had a new installment in like 15 years. But the idea for his design was to imagine what could have happened if the Kid Icarus series had never stopped. So everything takes inspiration from the source material, but very few things about Pit's appearance in Brawl are directly from the source material. That includes this bow. This bow design is original to Smash. The bows in the 2 Kid Icarus games at the time did not look like this. But also, the bow that Pit uses in Brawl doesn't really look like this either. The cool Smash Bros. Original concept with this bow is how it can be split into 2 blades, and the actual thing looks like it's made of 2 swords. The 2 halves of this bow look more like weird daggers, if anything. But really, this is just a bow. But then, after Brawl, there actually was a new Kid Icarus game, which incorporated a bunch of the ideas they came up with for Smash. And one of those is the use of this symbol. It's the icon that represents bow weapons in Kid Icarus Uprising. So it did retroactively become something. It's just that the thing it became was the thing that it already obviously looked like, a generic bow icon. But yeah, despite everything, this one has the same problem as the Fire Emblem symbol. At least a bow is a more distinctive weapon to use than a sword, but it's still D tier. For Wario, there's the letter W. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of the letter W. It's just such a boring choice, right? I mean, this is Wario we're talking about, the corner of the Mario franchise that's historically been allowed to most freely incorporate distinct wacky visuals. And very importantly, there's this really obvious choice, like right there. It's gotta be the Wario bomb, right? You know, from WarioWare? I get that a lot of people are under the impression that Wario's presence in Smash already focuses too much on WarioWare and that there should have been more things from Wario Land, but hear me out. This design is used throughout the WarioWare series as the timer for microgames. It's associated very strongly with the fast-paced chaos that defines the WarioWare games. It is very visually distinctive and can't be mistaken for anything else. It just would have been so perfect. Anyway, F tier. It's above the Donkey Kong one purely because it's a well-chosen letter. The Metal Gear series has used 2 completely different symbols, which I'll discuss separately. In Brawl, Metal Gear was represented with this fox that appears to have legs made out of lightning. This is the symbol for Force Operation X, or FOX, a fictional division of the CIA that appears multiple times throughout the Metal Gear Solid series. It's a little much, I think. It does look cool at least, but it's harder to parse at a smaller scale. And like, at the risk of talking about Metal Gear lore, the Fox unit is a Metal Gear Solid 3 thing, which isn't even the right snake. I think they could have found something a little better suited than this. C tier. And in Ultimate, they did find something better. It almost certainly had more to do with legal reasons related to the ownership of the Metal Gear franchise than it had to do with any of these design concerns, but in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, this series is represented with an exclamation point. Metal Gear is a stealth action series, and this exclamation point, with this specific design, is a great way to represent that aspect of the series symbolically. This is what appears in the games when you get spotted by an enemy, often signaling a transition out of stealth gameplay and into combat. It might not look as cool as the Fox emblem did, but it is a much clearer design, and it's associated much more directly with the series it represents. Well, arguably. This is still just a typographic character. I have been giving really low ratings to those so far, you might have noticed. However, at least it's not a letter. That earns it a Metal Gear Solid B tier. The Sonic the Hedgehog series is represented with the silhouette of the titular hedgehog's head. I don't think this was necessarily a bad choice, but it is kind of boring. Sonic is definitely the most visually distinctive thing in the Sonic series, but it's still pretty literal. This is a completely average C tier. The symbol for the Pikmin series is just a flower. Okay, but not just a flower. This 5-petal flower is pretty significant to the Pikmin games. These flowers grow from the heads of Pikmin, blooming once the creatures reach full maturity. This makes the flower a symbol both of the Pikmin themselves and of the player's cultivation of Pikmin. They're featured very prominently in the branding for every Pikmin game. This is a symbol of the series, and one of the most strongly associated ones at that. But also, it's just a flower. It's great symbolism, but also super generic. Basically the same situation that Kirby is in. That's a B tier. The Robot series games are represented with a top, resting on its side. This is a gyro, a physical accessory used for playing the game Gyromite, which was one of the 2 games released for the Nintendo Entertainment System that worked with the robotic operating buddy. I really like this design. It has this depth to it, like the gyro looks like it exists in 3D space, but without looking weird next to all the other completely flat symbols. It's also really fitting to use what's basically a top to represent Rob as a symbol. Rob was created specifically so that the Nintendo Famicom could be marketed outside of Japan as a toy instead of as a video game console. And a top is a really iconic symbol of just the idea of something being a toy. I think this goes in A tier. The Animal Crossing series uses a leaf with a hole in it as its symbol. Now this is what I'm talking about. Leaves with this exact design are everywhere in the Animal Crossing series. Most notably, this is what furniture looks like before it's been placed. This is a Japanese folklore thing, super interesting. Not much to say about this one, it just completely nails it. It's a good looking distinct symbol taken directly from the series that it represents that's associated with something related to that series' core concept. Well-earned S tier. Oh right, we're still not done with stuff that was first used in Brawl. The PictoChat stage and its later variant PictoChat 2 both use this symbol, made out of 2 rounded rectangular outlines. This symbol is the logo for the Nintendo DS handheld, and its design is a pretty straightforward simplification of the design of the DS itself, with its signature 2 screens. It looks pretty good, and I can't imagine there being a better way to visually communicate the idea of a stage representing an application from the built-in operating system of the Nintendo DS. Let's say B tier. The symbol for electroplankton is some sort of creature with fins. This is a nanocarp, which is one of the various aquatic organisms featured in the music game Electroplankton. It's fine, I guess. It is a distinctive visual from the source material, but that's about it. Could have kept the face. C tier. Super Smash Bros. Brawl featured a story mode called the Subspace Emissary. That story mode got its own symbol, which is a circle with a line going from its center to the left side. This is another abstract one, like the main Smash symbol and the Battlefield symbol from Melee. But this is an even simpler design than either of those. There are a lot of things that this kinda looks like. I've always interpreted this as being based on a power button, maybe representing the technology used by the Subspace Army. It also looks a little bit like the Robot series symbol. Although, if you really want to, you can interpret this as a large round barrier with a path connecting its center to the exterior. You could think of this as an abstract representation of one of the main plot points of the Subspace Emissary, is what I'm saying. A tier. The Mega Man series is represented with a gear, I guess. Gears do appear in the Mega Man series. It's a series about robots. That'll happen. I don't know, it's fine I guess, just nothing special. C tier. The Wii Fit series uses a human figure performing the yoga pose Nattarajasana, standing on one leg, using one arm to hold their other leg behind them with their foot pointing upwards, and with their other arm extended in front of them. I don't really like this one. Positives first though. I think the pose itself was well chosen. It very distinctly reads as a person doing yoga, and it fits the square aspect ratio better than some other iconic yoga poses would. However, I'm not a big fan of the complete lack of abstraction here. This seems to have been taken directly from the box art for Wii Fit, where it's not really used pictographically. It's a person's silhouette. I think simplifying this a little to put all the focus on the pose itself as a platonic ideal could have gone a long way. Or, you know, could have used a balance board. D tier. The Punch-Out series is represented by a boxing glove. This specific boxing glove is based on the one that appears in the title screen for the NES game Punch-Out. This is a game series about boxing, so using a boxing glove to represent it is a pretty natural choice. I would put this one in B tier, except that for some reason this is one of 3 separate series that's represented using a closed fist. It's not really Punch-Out's fault, but that fact alone is enough to bump this down to C tier. The Pac-Man series is represented with a circle that has a wedge missing. This was an extremely obvious choice. It's Pac-Man. If any series is going to get a symbol that's literally just the main character, Pac-Man makes the most sense. I do, however, have one nitpick here. Why does the mouth go back that far? It should be closer to the center of the circle. That's how Pac-Man usually looks in this style. Also, I'm not quite sure why he's facing to the left here. In most logos for Pac-Man games, Pac-Man appears facing to the right, standing in for the C in Pac. These are extremely minor things though. This is still an A tier series symbol. The Xenoblade Chronicles series has this sword. This is the Minato, Shulk's signature weapon. At least it's a more distinctive looking sword than the one used in the Fire Emblem emblem. C tier. Duck Hunt is represented with a duck. It's a duck. C tier. The Nintendog series is represented with a paw print. There's a paw print in the Nintendog's logo, and it doesn't look like this. It has a really distinctive design, and Smash just uses this kind of generic paw print. B tier. For dogs. Street Pass Me Plaza gets, this crown. This is the crown worn by the Mii that you need to find in Find Me, and Find Me 2. 2 of the sub-games in this pre-installed 3DS app. This is another really generic one. It could have been interesting to try to use something more specific to Street Pass instead of just a crown. Like, I don't know, maybe maybe a play coin or something? What would make the connection between this stage in Smash 4 based on a 3DS built-in app and the stage in Brawl based on a DS built-in app more apparent? B tier. The Tomodachi series is represented with this house icon. And it's a house. There are, in fact, houses in the Tomodachi games. This specific house icon doesn't seem to actually be from those games though, so it's literally just a generic house icon. B tier. The Balloon Fight series uses this pair of balloons. And okay, this one's pretty decent. Balloons are like the main defining feature of Balloon Fight, so it's a natural choice, and the design itself looks nice. B tier. Balloons. The Wrecking Crew series is represented with a steel drum. I've got a couple problems with this one. First of all, that's a barrel. There are steel drums in Wrecking Crew that play a prominent role in the gameplay, but when stylized like this, it just looks like a barrel. And there's already a much more well-known retro Nintendo game that already has a very strong association with barrels. The other one is more conceptual. Why does this symbol even exist? Wrecking Crew is a Mario game from literally 1984. While I do understand why Smash wouldn't classify this as a Super Mario game and use the Super Mushroom for it, there are some other stages for Mario game that are distinctly not Super that use the Super Mushroom. It makes sense to use a mushroom for Mario Kart stuff, I get that. It's a little more questionable, but still understandable to use a mushroom for a Paper Mario stage, but the one that's really throwing me off here is the Mario Bros stage from Brawl. I just cannot think of a single reason why you would classify the Mario Bros arcade game as a Mario game, but not Wrecking Crew. It's so weird. I don't get it. D tier. The Pilot Wing series uses this airplane. It's a series about flying an airplane, so this is an obvious choice. It looks fine. C tier. The Wii Sports series is represented with a palm tree and a volcano. This is a representation of Woohoo Island from Wii Fit and Wii Sports Resort, except it doesn't really look that much like Woohoo Island. Woohoo Island has other landmarks besides Maka Woohoo, the volcano. If instead of a palm tree there was, say, the candle or the Red Iron Bridge, then it could be a little more distinctly Woohoo. Woohoo Island is often thought of as a character, one of the most memorable characters from the Wii era. This symbol is like if the Sonic series symbol just looked like a hedgehog instead of being Sonic's silhouette. D tier. Time for more edge cases, yippee! Super Smash Bros. Brawl introduced a stage builder, which allowed players to make their own custom stages. These stages used the Smash symbol in Brawl, but in Smash 4, these custom stages were given their own symbol, and then in Ultimate they got another completely different symbol. The symbol used in Smash 4 is just some shapes. This is about as generic as it gets. I'm sure you could read into the symbolism here like I have for the rest of the abstract symbols so far, but honestly I think this one is just some shapes. D tier. The symbol used in Ultimate, on the other hand, is much better. You've got this big platform with what looks like a pencil over it. That's a really good way to represent the idea of a level editor, and it's also a nicer looking design. A tier. Miiverse is represented with this icon of 3 people standing next to each other. This is the app icon for Nintendo's defunct social media platform that they made for the Wii U in 2012. It looks like the app icon for a defunct social media platform that was made in 2012. D tier. The Street Fighter series is represented with the letters S and F in a cool looking font. Just like with Donkey Kong and Wario, representing a series with initials like this is saying that the source material has nothing visually or conceptually distinctive about it. You can do better than this. F tier. Okay, so the Final Fantasy series is represented with the letters FF in a serif font. I don't believe for a second that this was the best idea they could come up with. This is Final Fantasy. This is a series with a very long legacy and a lot of really iconic imagery. Even considering the intellectual property restrictions they were working with in Smash 4, they still had a lot of really good options they could have used. FF goes in F tier. The Bayonetta series uses this crescent moon shape with a dot in the center. This is a simplification of the design of the Umbran Watch, a magical artifact with an important role in Bayonetta lore. This also appears in the logo for Bayonetta 2. Okay, finally we're back to the good stuff. This is a simple, distinctive design that represents something important to the source material and that has been used as part of the series branding. I think that earns it an A tier. The Splatoon series is represented with this cartoon squid with eyes. This is an inkling in squid form, and this specific cartoon design of these kids turned squids appears all over the place in Splatoon. This is just a really appealing design. The symbolism isn't particularly deep or anything, but that's alright, A tier. For the Castlevania series, there's... Wow, seriously? Okay, it's a castle. It's Dracula's Castle from Castlevania. This is from the Japanese title screen for the first game in the series, but with more detail added? That bat wasn't there before. There's just so much. At thumbnail scale, you really can't tell that this is even a castle because of how cluttered this design is. Sure, it looks cool at full size, but these symbols aren't shown at full size most of the time. D tier. For Dracula. So, Miis were first playable in Super Smash Bros. 4, but they're classified as Smash characters, and the stages based on Mii-related games are all given their own separate symbols. However, in Smash Ultimate, there's, this symbol, which is used for spirits from games with Miis in them instead of using the dedicated symbols that those games were already given. Specifically, this groups together things from Street Pass Mii Plaza, Tomodachi, Pilot Wings, and Wii Sports, as well as some spirits from Wii Music, Wii Party, and Nintendo Land. Anyway, this is literally just the word Mii. This is even worse than initials. It's gotta be the worst one of any of these series symbols. F tier. Okay, this one definitely shouldn't count, but Smash Wiki lists it, so whatever. Assist trophies. In Smash Ultimate, this symbol is used for the assist trophy sound effects in the sound test menu. It's a pretty nice looking image of the assist trophy item, the thing you use to summon these miscellaneous characters. I'll say B tier. World of Light, the story campaign in Smash Ultimate, uses this symbol, a circle with 4 wings around it. This isn't used nearly as much as the Subspace Emissary symbol is used in Brawl. It's Gleam, the main antagonist of World of Light. This is just what he looks like. It's fine. C tier. Last edge case, I promise. In previous Smash Bros. Games, minor things that aren't from one of the series that has a symbol would generally be represented with the Smash symbol directly. However, in Ultimate, spirits that aren't from a series with major representation are instead represented with this ellipsis, to distinguish between them and things that are actually from Smash. This one is so boring. Smash has come up with cool designs for symbols that generically represent things that aren't from any particular series before, and this just really isn't doing anything. D tier. The Persona series is represented with his top hat and mask with a flaming eye. This is the symbol for the Phantom Thieves of Hearts, a group that includes Joker. This is really specific to Persona 5 and not the rest of the series, but it definitely looks cool, and the only Persona character in Smash is from Persona 5 anyway. I think B tier. The Dragon Quest series uses this sigil that kinda looks like a bird. This is the Mark of Erdrick from the first 3 Dragon Quest games. From what I can tell, it doesn't appear to have any actual significance in the source material, apart from being a symbol associated with the important character Erdrick. I mean, at least they tried. It's certainly not the first thing I would think of as being an iconic symbol of the Dragon Quest series, but at least they didn't just write out the initials DQ. C tier. The Banjo-Kazooie series uses a jigsaw puzzle piece as its symbol. This is a Jiggy, the main collectible item in Banjo-Kazooie. Since Banjo-Kazooie is a collectathon, a game all about collecting stuff, it makes perfect sense to represent it with one of the things that you need to collect. That's an A tier for sure. The Fatal Fury series is represented with a 5-pointed star. See, this is the thing I was talking about with Kirby. A lot of games use stars as symbols. It's a pretty generic thing to do. This star appears in the logos of some Fatal Fury games, and it's also somewhat associated with the character Terry specifically. But, you know, it's just a star. There isn't really any thematic connection here. That's D tier. The symbol for arms is a closed fist. Like, it makes sense that Punch-Out and Arms would have very similar symbols. These are both games about punching, but like, come on, one of you needs to change. C tier. Minecraft is represented with a cube, viewed from one corner with one side filled in and the other 2 sides as outlines. This is a really strong choice. Minecraft is one of the only games popular enough where using a symbol this non-specific still feels right. Sure, lots of games have cubes in them, but Minecraft is the game that has cubes in it. It also isn't designed like any specific Minecraft block, it's just the idea of a cube. The pickaxe or something might have been easier to recognize as specifically being a Minecraft thing, but I think this was a great idea. A tier. The Tekken series is okay, that's just the arms one again. At least these 3 fist symbols look like they're different fists? They're oriented in different directions and they're wearing different gloves. It's just, you can't say that all 3 of these series have punching as the thing that separates them from other series. Smash is a fighting game. Most of these characters punch. It's just not specific enough. C tier again. And finally, we have Kingdom Hearts. The Kingdom Hearts series is represented with a crown. And hey, Street Pass Me Plaza, this is how you make a crown symbol look distinctive. This is one of the main symbols used in the branding for Kingdom Hearts games to represent the series, and it's a really good one. So like, it is a crown, but the shape is just abstract enough that it can be interpreted in multiple ways. The main one, of course, is that this is also the teeth of a key, like Sora's Keyblade. I will not spend any time explaining Kingdom Hearts, but very long story short, keys are associated in some way or another with a whole bunch of the core recurring themes of the Kingdom Hearts series. I think this is one of the best ones. It's visually distinctive, it's commonly used as a symbol for the series in other contexts, and it looks really cool. I'm putting this one in S tier. For Sora. And there we have it. I've been pretty critical of a lot of these, so I should stress that as a set, I think these are pretty well designed. The only ones I really dislike are the ones I put in D or F tier. I think it's really cool that these even feel like they make sense as a coherent set of symbols at all, actually. They're pulled from such a wide variety of sources that it doesn't really seem like they should all work together like this. Sort of like Smash Bros itself in a way. Anyway, I don't have a bigger point I wanted to make about any of this, so that's the whole video. I've been Jan Misali, and I challenge Super Smash Bros fans to acknowledge that a AAA video game cannot be created by a single person. Masahiro Sakurai is a very hands-on director, and he had a major role in designing a lot of aspects of Super Smash Bros., but he definitely did not design most of these series symbols. The Smash Bros. Games were made by very large teams of people, and it wouldn't have been any specific person's job to design this entire set. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate credits 21 people for UI design, and none of those people are Masahiro Sakurai. He probably had some input for what the general concepts of some of these should be, but it wouldn't make sense to attribute any of the specific design details to him. That's not what a game director does.